I'm Owen Bigland. This is the Inside Edge video blog. Okay, some topics in the news right now for real estate. The NDP just announced more details on this anti-flipping tax that they've been talking about for about the last 6 or 7 months. I've done a couple of short blogs on it. So they've given us some more details on this. This anti-flipping tax or flipping tax is going to start January 1st, 2025. It's going to be a 20% tax on homes sold within 1 year, so bought and sold in short order. And then it will be a sliding scale from 20% for the first 2 years. So I've given you guys a few little details on this in the past and talked about how this is just another one of those, smoke and mirror taxes and ideas that the NDP, the socialist regime we're under, has come out with to try and buy votes to make it look like we're doing something about affordability. They continue. This has been going on for 6.5, 7 years now. It's just nonstop. They continue to try and attack the demand side. Good luck with that. Have done very little to nothing on the supply side, which now they're starting to talk more about, but we've lost 7 years here. They continue to attack the demand side, which is like holding a overinflated balloon underwater in a city as great as Vancouver, the most desirable city in Canada by far, and one of the most desirable cities and places to live in North America. So, but the crazy thing is, I bet if I were to go on the street right now and ask 10 people on the street, do you think this flipping tax is a good idea? And I bet you 8 or 9 out of 10 would say, yeah, that sounds like a good plan. We've got flippers and speculators and foreign buyers. They're buying homes and they're flipping them for huge profit, which of course they're not. I've talked about this many times over the years. We've had a few hot spells over the last 20 years where, hey, you could buy a condo or a detached house, hang on to it for 6 months or a year and flip it and make a pretty decent profit. But those are very short-term windows. They're not around very often, especially when you back out these friction costs. We've got some of the highest friction costs in the world in buying and selling real estate here in the Lower Mainland. You've got the PTT on the way in. I've done tons of blogs on that. Biggest tax grab going, introduced in the early 80s to curb speculation in the luxury housing market. The 2% kicked in at anything over 200 grand, and that only affected about 5% of the home sales back in the early 80s. That's when you could buy a detached house in kits for $275,000. Now that $275,000 kits home is more like $3 million. Yet the PTT tax has never been adjusted. It's never been indexed to account for the tenfold rise in housing prices. So it's the biggest tax grab going. You've also got GST and perhaps a double dip on the GST, and I've done lots of blogs on this before as well. If you sell a new condo in under a year, or even sometimes over a year, and you have not lived in the home or put a tenant in it for at least a year, there's a very good chance that you're going to get audited. Either the buyer and seller will get audited on this by Revenue Canada, and there will be a second set of GST. It all depends on how you write the contract. What they're going to do is they're going to contact the brokerage and have us send the contract of purchase and sale. They'll see how it's written. It amazes me how so many people get caught off guard by this. A lot of realtors don't know anything about this, which is great. Because I'm buying some of these units from time to time and I'm writing a clause in to protect my buyer. I'm writing in that this price I'm offering you is inclusive of GST. A lot of sellers are unsuspecting. They think, oh, that's no problem. I already paid the GST to the developer when I got the keys. They're in for a rude awakening. Again, they get a letter in the mail saying you owe us another $30,000 in GST. Hey, I already paid the GST when I bought the unit from the developer. Yeah, you did, but you sold it 6 months later. We want another set of GST. The other big deterrents, of course, are capital gains tax. 50% of the gain is taxable at your marginal rate. The other one is, I've talked about many times before, we already have a bit of a flipping tax in from the federal government and CRA. If they see that you are buying and selling homes in short order, you're okay with one. If you sell a second one maybe a year later or a year and a half later, you're in a danger zone. If you sell 3 homes, let's say, over the course of 3 or 4 years, you're going to get audited. You're going to get audited, and they're going to say that, hey, you're doing this now as a full-time business. This isn't a casual, you're buying, moving to another province or whatever. You're an habitual buyer and seller or flipper. And they will not give you the benefit of the 50% capital gains. The full profit on the home will be taxed at your full marginal rate. So for these reasons, friction costs, double dipping on the GST, the capital gains exemption if you don't get the capital gains if you buy and sell in short order from CRA. This has eliminated almost all flipping and speculating. And you, again, need this, to even have that play out, you need a market to go on an epic rip. You buy the house and it goes up 30% in a year or 18 months. That very rarely ever happens because that's what you're going to need to make up for all these friction costs here. The one thing I want to point out that you guys will never see in the media, because of course they're always a day late and a buck short, and most of them are bought and paid for by the socialist liberals and the socialist NDP. I've talked about this a few times in the earlier videos on this, what this is going to eliminate. What this is going to eliminate, this flipping tax, would be renovators. And I've said many times here, renovators, the professional ones, offer and provide an excellent service, especially for young first-time buyers. Because what it allows them to do is now mortgage the new reno costs. So for instance, if you're buying an old dilapidated townhouse, let's say it's for $900K, needs a full reno. That reno is probably going to cost about $200K for the average guy. 50% is going to be for labor, 50% for materials. Most people are buying those townhomes, they don't have a spare $200,000 cash sitting in the bank account. They're putting everything they can into the down payment to get qualified for that $900,000 townhouse. What these professional flippers do, and renovators, is they come in, they're pros, they've got all their own labor, they've got connections with the materials, they do a beautiful job on this townhouse, and then put it back on the market as a finished product. Let's call it for $1,150,000, let's call it, or $1,100,000. Now that buyer can go in and he doesn't need $200,000 cash. He needs maybe another $40,000 or $50,000 down and can mortgage that, build it into the mortgage. So this flipping tax is going to eliminate a very good service, in my opinion. And I've done blogs on houses in Richmond. I used to see the same group of guys that would come in, same thing with a lot of good quality one beds downtown. If they were old, dilapidated, and the strata was in good order, a lot of times it was some of these renovators and these guys weren't getting rich. They were making it up for it because the labor, they already had all the trades. They had discounts on and connections with materials. And they were eking out a decent little profit. It's a tough business doing this renovating and businesses. I've done lots of blogs on it. So very little flipping going on anyways, and it eliminates that renovator. Just a couple of little things here that I want to point out here. Of course, a couple of economists have stepped up here. The BC Real Estate Association, our top economist, doesn't understand this tax at all. Essentially, they were saying that it might collect about $40 million in 2025, but that will be offset by sellers that won't sell as many homes, of course, so they'll hold off on selling until after the 2-year mark, thus eliminating about the same amount in the property transfer tax. And they also think that it will probably put upward pressure on prices. Even David Eby here comes out with a statement here saying that he told a news conference, this flipping tax is not a silver bullet, but anything the government can do to reduce the number of people competing for housing is welcome. So even he says it's probably not going to do anything. And again, it reduces the number of people competing for housing. So again, attacking demand. This is all they've done with all these myriad of taxes they've done over the last 6 years. Keep attacking that demand side. Don't touch the supply side. Let's forget about building more homes. Let's just keep taxing everything to death and try and hold that balloon underwater for demand. So again, it comes in January 2025, 20% tax. Oh, and the other thing I should point out too here that, they were also saying, the Economists here from Vancouver Real Estate Board, again, they don't understand it. It's going to reduce the amount of sales and units for sale. It will be offset any money they collect by a lack of PTT revenue, so it'll probably be revenue neutral. But they're surprised by all this because given there's a very low percentage of short-term flipping going on. They estimate that it's less than 2% in both Vancouver and Victoria. Less than 2% where people are buying and selling in under 2 years. And keep in mind, guys, of that 2%, doesn't mean they're flipping and making money on these. I would say 75 or 80% of this 2%, these people are losing money on these, and sometimes they are losing their shirts. It's what I call a change of circumstance. Most of it, a lot of it comes from the pre-sale market, where they buy a luxury condo at pre-sale, takes 5, 6, Burrard Place over here was 7 years from the time they put their deposit down. There was what I call a whole bunch of change of circumstance because I talked to the realtors. Why are they selling? You know, it's divorce, took too long to build. They thought they were going to move into it in 4 years, but it took 7 years. Job loss, job transfer, all kinds of stuff that forced those people to sell those units. Pretty much all the 2 and 3 bedrooms in several of these luxury towers, they lost money on these, big time. After you deduct the GST, the PTT, the real estate commissions of $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 to sell, plus somebody's going to have to pay that second set of GST. Depends on how you write the contract. With me, you know, I've written on several of those last year. I write in the contract that my price is inclusive of GST and hope they don't scratch it out, which they never do because they're not aware of it. That way, when it does get audited down the road, they'll pull the contract and see how it was written. When I write in there that my price is inclusive of GST, my buyer's off the hook. They're going to go back to that seller and surprise, surprise, he's going to get a letter in the mail for another $65,000 in GST, and he's going to be shocked. So very few of this 2% doesn't mean they're making any money. I would say the vast majority of these are losing money. Final little thing here. Let's just do one more tax thing here, a couple other tax things. I keep seeing more fallout from that removal of the rental restriction. Remember, I've done several blogs on this, and I just did an update here. You know, I had a whole bunch of stratas in Richmond, some stuff in the east side that either didn't allow rentals or had a very low cap on it. Once that cap got removed, it now opened up the market for my investor clients. I was selling principal residence buyers into these units as well. But if I had an investor client, some of these were great stratas that I couldn't sell these units to because you couldn't buy it and rent it out. EB and the NDP removed that. And again, another thing saying that this was going to help housing prices and get more young people in the market. No, it's not. It's the reverse of that. That was the one leg up that a lot of these first-time buyers had. They could go in and buy into some of these good older stratas. They weren't competing against deep-pocket investors. Now they are. The proof is there. I would love to see the media. They never talk about this. It wouldn't take long to do. Go and pull 10 or 15 of these strata that had rental restrictions. Have a look at what the price per square foot was prior to this announcement, and now have a look at what these units have been selling at for the last year, because this rental restriction has been removed now for a year. Take a look. I can beat you to it if you want. We had a spike in prices. Prices went up anywhere from 5 to 10% across the board on these strata, because now investors can come in, they're good strata, you can buy them and you can put a tenant in and rent them. And I would say as well, as I did in my other blogs, these prices were depressed a little bit because they did have a rental restriction. And remember, the other thing is some of my buyers, I've got lots of buyers that aren't looking to rent these homes out, but it's good to have that as a backup plan. In other words, if something changes, they get a job transfer, they lose their job and they're forced to sell in a down market, this allows them to, without having a rental restriction, allows them to at least put a tenant into it, rent it for a year and a half until the market recovers and then sell. So this was another one of the NDP's promises that just completely backfired. It was one of the only areas that young people had an advantage, first-time buyers, in getting into some of these good strata that had a rental restriction. Now it's gone. Couple of little things. Just give you a quick update here. We're now March 2024, so early spring update. Sales to active listings ratio stats just came out. We're in a seller's market across the board, guys, except for detached, which is moving up quick. Condo market currently right now, sales to active listings ratio is 26%, so that is a strong seller's market. Townhomes are at 30%. That is a very strong seller's market. Remember anything over 20 is a seller's market. Between 12 and 20 is balanced. Below 12 is a buyer's market, which we never get into. Detached now is at 16% and moving up pretty briskly here. If you guys remember, we were in a buyer's market 6 months ago. We dipped into 11%. Now we're at 16, so we're in balanced territory. I'm going to say by later this spring, especially or later this summer or fall, if we get a couple of interest rate drops, this will immediately go into a seller's market as well. It'll go over 20%. Final thing. I keep giving you guys these updates here. Another. I'm inundated with this. It is unprecedented. This is another one, 1065 Pacific at Thurlow. They've got the notice of the public hearing here. They're going to build a 32-story, 180 secured market rental, and 20% will be secured below market rental. Which is, boy, I don't know, again, I always say, how do you win that lottery? Because this is on Pacific, prime real estate. Here we are, we're building stratified condo, in some cases luxury condo, hugging up on bridges. And the best real estate you can buy in the West End with unobstructed views of English Bay and Southwest exposure, those we're building market rental on. Something is very mixed up here in this city. And in this province, but it is what it is. I don't know why they wouldn't allow a developer here to build a luxury condo, ultra luxury condo on this site, and exchange some parcels or something for some less desirable areas that you could build 2 or 3 times the amount of rental stock. But we continue to build. This would be like building rental homes and co-ops and subsidized housing, social housing in Beverly Hills or Bel Air or Park Avenue. That's kind of the same thing we've got here. But guys, we're not building any more condo, as I've been telling you guys. You'll never hear this in the media. In 8 to 10 years from now, you'll be wondering where it all went wrong, will be the headline in the news. You could have bought a decent older concrete unit in the West End for around $1,000 a square foot right now. That'll be selling at $1,300 or $1,400 a square foot. And anything new being built will be at $2,000 a square foot and up. Nothing wrong with building, as I said all along, more rental housing, market rental though. Keep in mind, these are going to be $3,000 for a 1-bed. So again, it's the socialist way. Will enable you, get you into the renter quicksand, but it's coming at a cost of building stratified condo. And that's what I want to point out to you guys. They're not going to build any more condo. Demand is going to continue to grow. They're going to give you a little bit of rental stock here, but that's not going to do it. With 30 or 40,000 new arrivals coming into the Lower Mainland, not building any more condo, what do you think is going to happen to the prices over the next 10 or 15 years? They're going to go up, and probably go up at a quicker pace than what they have the last 10 years. I'm Owen Bigland. As always, thanks for watching. See you next week.